because I've got a lot
Too
to
much
do.
on.
Yeah, I have got too much on. So
Just do
right,
what you can.
I'll do what I can, but it is going to be, as I say, we're going to we will be finishing just shortly after 12, to be honest with you. So first
Okay.
things first, Peter's. Don't be alarmed. Peter phoned me from hospital tomorrow. Yeah, yesterday. He's in hospital and he's had to. He's got a heart problem. So he phoned me from hospital.
Right.
So he can't. It's bad, right? But it can't be that bad that he was able to phone me, right? I'm trying to say that in. Well, what I'm trying to say
he's probably
is if he was dying, right, he wouldn't have been able to phone me. So it is serious, but it's not as serious as it's a heart thing. So. Richard's got an appointment today, and something to do with Kathy as well. Apparently, she doesn't like Ruth because Ruth is a socialist, and she didn't want to be in the same room with her.
Kathy's having a television put on her wall.
Yeah, Kathy does like Kathy does like you, Ruth, because she would have told us all to fuck off if she didn't like us. Kathy is like the posh one of the group. I got to be honest with you.
I know she never puts a foot wrong, does she? God bless her.
Yeah. No, she never. She can put a foot wrong because she's special.
Is she a teacher? Was she a teacher?
Do you know what? Actually, do you know what? Right. I got a lot of respect for Kathy. She seems to be the type of teacher type person, doesn't she? So
yeah.
Yeah, I would say she is. Kathy. Right. So today we're going to be looking at Cosmeston Medieval Village and a little bit about the origins of Cosmeston Medieval Village and how it became such an amazing tourist attraction. So what I am doing at this minute is I've got to do a couple of things in the background, as you know, because I've got to do some YouTube stuff to get this all up and running. So what I'm going to ask, is there any news from you, Anne, this week? And it's got to be about archaeology, Anne. Nothing to do with your conquests or anything.
I was very lucky. On Sunday, my daughter came out and we went to see St. John's House on Newcastle Hill.
Oh, we want to know all about it. Yeah.
It was an open day. And it is
a Newcastle Hill for everyone watching. Yeah, carry on.
It's just excellent. It's really worth a visit. The fireplace was lovely, and there was a coffin drop in the ceiling, and you could see where it had been two houses where you could see the architecture. And there's a lot to see there, and they unfortunately don't know a lot about it before it was bought by Mr. Coffin, who was in the iron and steel. Yeah, his name was W. Coffin.
Hang on, big smile on my face. So you've got something called a coffin drop in there, and you've got a guy called Mr. Coffin.
Yeah, that's what I remembered.
Can I get this straight? Is it called a coffin drop because it's to do with Mr. Coffin, or it's just to do with a coffin?
No, it's to do with they would have had to taken the floorboards up to drop the coffin down, from upstairs, because the
stairs.
Yeah, the stairs are just too narrow. It's a medieval house. It's all stone, and it's just a lovely little place to go. It's got quite big, really. It's got a nice big room inside, and a couple of rooms downstairs, a kitchen, and upstairs is a sort of a hallway, which must have been like a bedroom at one time, a couple of bedrooms. So the floorboards would be obviously, this is from coffin this is from the Victorian or maybe 17th century, where they had the coffin drop, because they would have had wooden floorboards. I don't know if they would have had wooden floorboards in medieval times.
Yes, they would have had. That's
right. Okay.
Yeah. So can I ask you? This is a really stupid question, right? obviously they're preparing the bodies upstairs and they're making the coffins upstairs to put the bodies in to bring them down, or it's just that somebody's making the coffins upstairs and they're bringing the coffins down.
He's not a coffin maker.
Right. Okay.
No, he's not a just because his name's Mr. Coffin.
No, I'm going back to the coffins. I'm going back to his coffin drop.
Well, I expect they would have put. I expect they would have put them in a coffin. They might have made the coffin upstairs. Yeah.
Yeah.
They might have.
No, that's the point. If you've got a coffin drop, then obviously yeah.
Well, they wouldn't have just dropped the body down. I don't think they would.
No,
put it in
no, they wouldn't. They wouldn't. Tell us a bit more.
You two are just too cute.
Hey, you two, shut up. Tell us a little bit more. Go on.
Well, as I say, it was thought to be ecclesiastic. They think it might have been a place where people went on the pilgrimage. It's just like a hostelry, and they stopped over on their way to Pembrokeshire, St David's. There would be pilgrims, because I did notice there was a shell there. A pilgrim shell.
A lead one. Is this a lead pilgrim?
Santiago.
Yeah, like Santiago de Compostela,
Yes.
But the shell is the sign of
St.
I don't know
James.
what else to say, really, because we were there and I was talking to somebody, and then we had a little tour. Well, the tour was nice, and he told us what you needed to know. And it's still a bit of a mystery. It's still a bit of a mystery, what it actually was. But they call it St. John's, Hospitaller. They thought it was the crusade, part of the St. John's in the crusade. What are they, like monks?
There was the Hospitallers and there was the Templars. The Hospitallers were like the, they were the people that used to
they
go
would
out.
Yeah, they would have just, been sheltered for people, on their way to St. David's. Because there was a castle. There is a castle, only 500 yards from the house.
That's right.
It's a great little trip out on a Sunday afternoon. If the house is open, you can go to the castle and then come down to the house and have a cup of coffee. You can have coffee, tea.
What's the name of the house?
And it's all free. People give donations. But out of
fire. Name of the house?
Pardon?
What's the name of the house?
St. John's House.
Cool.
And that's
there's a site. There's a site on, they have got a website, so it's Facebook site, St. John's House, Newcastle Hill, Bridgend.
Good. Anyway, we're gonna have to crack on. Anyway, thanks for that, Anne. So that's every Sunday, yeah? Or Sunday?
No, once a month usually.
Once a month, yeah.
Oh, that's in the winter. So you have to check the website or the post, the site to see when. But it's usually open on a Sunday. It might be in the summer. It might be every week. Yeah.
Did you see lovely Levine there?
No, she wasn't there. There was quite a few ladies there.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, thanks for that, Anne. We've got to crack on. So anything from Ruth? Thanks for that. Anything from Ruth and Kate? No?
Not really.
No.
Okay. Right. Okay then. Okay. So if you two can be a little bit more quieter with those dogs, that'd be great.
I'm going to turn it off.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, Right, okay. As I said, we've got a bit of a short one. Thanks for all that, Anne. And we are going to look at Cosmeston Medieval Village. And one thing we're going to look at is a little story that nobody ever, well, because I worked at Cosmeston Medieval Village, I do know lots of little things, but we won't do all them today. But what we will do is I will start off by telling you a little story that they might not tell you anymore at Cosmeston, which isn't one of those great secrets or anything. It's just like one of those things that if you're only there for half an hour, they're going to forget to tell you. So it's to do with the Americans, right? Damnable Americans, they get everywhere, even in my classes. Right, okay, so this is what we've got here. We've got a map from published in 1885. This is an Ordnance Survey map. This is the first sheet from 1878. Well, it was originally planned in 1878. And what we've got, the word Upper Cosmeston, we've got Cosmeston written on the map, and we've got site of castle. Now, interestingly enough, we don't know anything more than that from this map. Now, what we do have is the story of the archaeologists excavating a Cosmeston Medieval Village, Glamorgan Grant Archaeological Trust, which we're going to do today, just that. We'll look at a few images, and this is based on the work of David Robinson, South Glamorgan's Heritage. And when this was published in, it was written in 1984, and this came out in 1985. So that's the type of time I was actually at Cosmeston as a volunteer. And getting this book was like gold dust back in the day. And my memories of Cosmeston Medieval Village are so fond that it's ingrained in me. I've been accused by archaeologists of thinking about the good old days when I talk about Cosmeston. Those days will never ever come back because there was a lot of money around. But then again, if you do things rightly, then archaeology can be fun and really interesting. As we try to do this each week, and anyone else who's actually watching, these are the classes that we do on a Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock. So this map thing, Cosmeston Medieval Village, for those who don't know, is a little weird place that you drive through. That you've got Cosmeston Lakes. When I say weird place, it's got nothing really distinct other than the captain's wife on the main road, and basically a few houses and a farm on the right. And if you're lucky, you remember to see the reconstructed medieval village on the left, if you're looking out of your car and not focusing on the driving. So and then you end up in Penarth. So it's basically between Sully and Cardiff, and before you get to Penarth from the Barry Road. So again, site of castle. There we go. Site of castle, marked, as I say, originally surveyed in 1878. Now, one of the things of this is that you've got site of castle, and if you notice, the road is a little bit straighter. So if you follow that boundary there, with the little house there, the little black thing, castle site of the little black thing. And so if we go back to the earlier map, we can see the house there, and you can actually see that the road has been straightened. Now that's a really important thing, that the road has been straightened. Now, who actually straightened the road? This map is dated 1947. Those who actually straightened the road was actually the American Army. Right, because you can imagine that the Americans, they had this windy road and so on. So the Americans said to the British administrators, right, we've got carte blanche, right? We need to get stuff back and forth from Cardiff docks, and we need to get stuff back and forth from Barry docks. We need to get stuff back and forth from Cardiff to Barry because we've got a military base, and we've got this big D-Day landing that's going to happen on the 6th of June, 1944. So what happens is that the Americans basically straighten the road. It's now a concrete road. They lay concrete all along the road. So in other words, the Americans rebuild the entire road, basically from Penarth all the way through to Sully, and actually Atlantic Trading Estate. That's one little story they don't tell you. And why is that important? Why am I telling you about a road, right? Why am I telling you about a silly road? Well, the reason why I'm telling you about a silly road is it went through the medieval village, or part of the medieval village. Now, it went through the south part of the medieval village, where we're really not sure what's going on. But the wonderful Americans did us a favor, right? And what they did was actually this road here was actually going through the original medieval village. The original road went through the original medieval village. So by straightening the road, in the long term, the Americans actually did us a favor. Even though they built the road over part of the medieval village towards the south, the actual village that you actually see on display today, where the buildings are either side of the road, are thanks to the Americans straightening the road, right? So that you can actually, so in other words, that line there is actually the street of the medieval village. Now, we didn't know that that was the street of the medieval village until excavating it in the 1980s, right? So you know, thank you very much, Americans, right? And you can actually see where the road that actually straightened, you can actually see it curving there, lower Cosmeston. So the road, the Americans said, right, we want a straight road. That's what they did, right? Bingo. And it didn't take any prisoners. So back in the day, I was a bit sort of confused what was going on, because of, you know, I was only like 8 or 9, and I just thought, well, this road. So when you actually walk on the road, that was in the medieval village, that was the road before the 1940s, basically. American second, or was it first and second Airborne Division, got to Barry about 1942, and they totally changed that part of Barry for their short stay. In other words, the American Army was only in Barry for 2 years, and it completely changed the place, including the women, who actually had nylons and so on. So anyway, back to the story of Cosmeston. I love this view, and the reason why I love this view is if we think about the map, if we think about the map, and what we're gonna do is, hang on, if we go back to the earlier map there, and we think about that line there where it says through the S. Well, it's really difficult to work out the sort of boundaries and everything that's going on. But what we are going to draw is on the map. We can actually show you where the original road sort of used to be. So if we do this, basically that's where the old road used to be, right? And strangely enough, it sort of disappears in this area because it was all grassed over. And there is the old boundary. So what you've got the whole thing ready for archaeology. And they didn't know that there was a medieval village there at that point. What they did know was that if we stop the annotation, what they did know, this is typical in archaeological fashion. What they did know is that in this area, hang on. Oh, and Anne, I've got a beautiful photograph of you, which I will describe in a minute. This area here is the medieval castle area, right? And I've got a photograph of Anne in a hole down by here, right, with a hand poking out the top, with her red hair. So yes. That was, we went there in about 2007, 2008, Anne, right? And they were digging there. So typical archaeological fashion, right? The archaeologists put their trust where they're processing pottery and all the rest of it directly on top of the manor house. That's what we do as archaeologists. We always put the spoil heap in the wrong place. That's where they would eventually excavate the bread oven, right? So we always do this in archaeology. We always do, and there you go. You can see it there. That's the original boundary, and obviously the road's coming in there. So those two areas, archaeologists need to move the spoil to over by here, and then we had to move the caravans over by here. So it was all go at Cosmeston. Wherever we were putting things, that would be where we need to excavate. So that was the typical story about Cosmeston. We always sort of, when I say we, I felt it was we, because we, you know, I was this a very annoying volunteer. Actually, I wasn't. They liked me, and they used to pay for my bus and everything. They actually used to pay for my bus, Anne. It used to be great.
Oh, wow.
So and they used to invite me to events. Like I used to, I did the August bank holiday thing for a few years in a row.
Yes,
and,
I know.
and one of the things, Anne, right? One of the things, Anne, I think when I was about 10, one of the archaeologists went in the stocks, and he was the manager, and they didn't want to throw sponges at him to throw sponges at the manager. But when I went in the stocks, they all lined up and threw sponges at me. Made a lot of money that day.
Yeah, I'm sure they really liked you.
I made a lot of money that day, so that was good.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about the story. This is from this book's South Glamorgan Heritage. An aerial view during the early stages of excavation upon Cosmeston Medieval Village. I like that word, upon Cosmeston Medieval Village, upon it. Following trial work in 1982, a long-term project has been established, a joint venture between South Glamorgan County Council and Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust, and it would eventually involve the Vale of Glamorgan Council, because we had unitary authority. No, we didn't have unitary authorities then. So we had Barry Town Council, Vale of Glamorgan Borough Council, South Glamorgan County Council. Right, so money was everywhere. And anyway, that was 3 money pots from local government that could go towards the project. Joint venture with the Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust. And one thing is missing from there, Anne, isn't it? The Manpower Services Scheme. That provided most of the money for the project. And we're forgetting ICI, BP, and Dow Corning, because they all funded this project. And over time, and I gotta be honest with you, right? I know you guys and maybe other people watching this in the future will always hear me criticizing the Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust. But before the 1990s, the Glamorgan Gwent Archaeological Trust was the nicest thing ever. They had volunteers, they had lots of money, they had nice cups of tea, and the staff were really nice as well. And they used to, the one thing that I used to marvel at was that when I used to excavate there, when they used to have Americans staying, they would always sleep in the caravan that we'd always have tea and coffee, and they would always you would always hear an American accent. I'm from good old America. I come to excavate this medieval village. Anyway, I used to do my head in. Oh, we used to love them to bits, the Americans. Anyway, near the center left can be seen the remains of an excavated dovecote in the corner of the garden enclosure, the demise. And there we go. If we zoom in, hang on. Oh my God, I didn't get it on the image right over. Oh God. All right. Center left. Oh God. What I'm gonna have to do. Right, I'm gonna have to go out. I'm gonna have to go out of here. And hang on a minute. I didn't get the image right. Hang on a minute. Actually, do you know what I'm gonna do? If I edit this image, hang on a minute. If I edit the image that I've got, I should get the original thing. Hang on a minute. Edit. Hang on. I come back out a minute. Revert. Oh, hang on a minute. It's not doing it. Oh, hang on a minute. I'm a bit obsessed now. You've got to look at this image. Hang on a minute. Right, I've taken it directly from the book. So what we're going to do, we're going to get back into the share. Right, this is the wonders of technology. I couldn't do this with a laptop, so I'm going to get back onto you. Are you still there, guys?
Yes.
Well, I got to get back onto Zoom quickly. Zoom. Share. Right, and we'll get back to the screen. Start now. And here we go. Excellent. Let's do it. And we'll save that, and we'll look at the other image. There it is. Can you see that there now? So what we do, we can see the dovecote on the left.
Yeah, it's a lovely place to go. It's a lovely place to go, and I miss going there, because whenever we take our elderly relatives, they can't walk. They can't walk to the site, but it's great if you're able-bodied.
and you, yes, it is great. And what you can see on the screen is you can actually see the circular dovecote. That was excavated. That had been excavated at 1982. And you can see like a triangle of land. So over on the right-hand side, just before you get to the road, that's where the manor house is, and where the trust caravans are, that's where the manor house is as well. So you've got the dovecote, and just below the dovecote, there's some kind of a quarry. We think that was quarried, and what you've got is you've got a little square there. And we believe across this landscape, that triangular area was the Demise, which was the private gardens of the lord of the manor, which was either the Cavershams or the Constantine family. And I think later on the John family, I'm not exactly sure on that one. Basically you would have bee bowls there. So you'd have beehives, you'd have an orchard, you'd have all that there. So that was originally excavated. So the main village excavation can be seen on the right. So where that pile of spoil is that we had to move, right, that's where the main excavations were, in this area next door to this house here. We believe that this house may have had original origins. That house is still there today. That used to be the little museum. Oh, and it was a little museum indeed. It was a very it was like little cabinets with some artifacts in. Very, very interesting little museum. And now it's sort of little offices. And that building there was sort of our home, as it were, if you weren't over in the caravans. And basically that's where they would that's where they would get you to buy tickets and stuff. And then eventually they would start reconstructing. So that's the next bit of the story today. So if we get this up on big screen now, let's just sort of get that dominating, right? So the Cosmeston medieval village, the medieval village of Cosmeston, a future for your past. In 1954, Professor Beresford, I've got his works, published a somewhat revolutionary book entitled The Lost Villages of England. In it, he focused attention upon a previously unappreciated category of archaeological sites, the deserted medieval village. At the time, Professor Beresford provided a gazetteer of 1,353 such sites he had been able to identify, and these were in England. A new survey produced in 1971 revealed that the figure had risen to 2,263, and at present the total stands at well over 2,500, with numerous examples in all parts of the country. Now, I think Beresford actually covers Wales as well, because technically, as much as we hate to hear it, Wales is actually still part of England. So I think Beresford did include Wales as part of his villages of England. Until that changes, you know, we're technically English in this country. Anyway, that aside, I want to explain why we've got Welsh sites in an English book. Now, did it include Cosmeston medieval village? No, it didn't. No, it didn't. In 1971, because we really didn't know Cosmeston medieval village existed until a few years later. So the initial research on this project Cosmeston, generated considerable excitement amongst a group of professional historians and archaeologists, which in turn led to the formation of the medieval village research group. Actually, I got that bit wrong. I meant the initial research on the villages, the medieval villages, not this site. Sorry, I read that wrong. Each July in 1972, the group has excavated part of an extensive deserted site of Warren Percy in North Yorkshire. Such has been the subsequent interest that numerous people, both professional and amateur, have since joined the group. So eventually they would go on to excavate, some of those as volunteers would excavate this site at Cosmeston. And excavations have been undertaken at many sites throughout England. Apart from Warren Percy, some of the most important and revealing work has been carried out at Caldicot in Hereford, not Caldicot in Gwent, but Caldicot in Hereford. No, Hertfordshire, not Hereford, Hertfordshire. Goltho in Lincolnshire, Golmerdon in Wiltshire, and Raunds in Northamptonshire. So there's lots of medieval villages that are excavated, including Warren Percy, which is one of the famous ones. Together, the results of this work have provided have proved remarkable, and have done much to transform our ideas on medieval settlements in general, and leading to the research on this side of Cosmeston Medieval Village. Investigations in Wales have tended to lag behind the important advances made to the east of Offa's-Dyke, i.e. in bigger England. Indeed, with the recent publication 1982 of a medieval volume within the Glamorgan inventory produced by the Royal Commission on Ancient Historical Monuments in Wales, it is only just becoming apparent exactly how many deserted and shrunken villages sites exist or await identification in the Principality in Wales itself. So what we are going to do now is we're going to move on to another image, which is going to be very familiar to both me and Anne, which is in fact a dovecote. There it is. Unfortunately, when you go to the last time I went to the dovecote, it was slightly overgrown, which is a bit of a shame. Because it's not sort of on the tourist route, which it should be. The lower courses of an excavated medieval dovecote on the hillside above the main village excavations at Cosmeston. During the medieval period, these structures provided an important supply of eggs and fresh meat to the lord of the manor. Several other examples still survive intact in South Glamorgan, notably at Cadoxton Dovecote, which Anne's mentioned a few times, Lanswyck Major, southerly, up over the tump above the church at Lanswyck Major. That's another intact dovecote, and one that's quite remarkable. The roof is mainly gone, but it's still quite standing tall. Is the one at Monk Lash, which is quite in a ruinous state. That's another dovecote. And obviously, we get lots of examples of dovecotes in other areas, including Penmark, Jarlston, and so on. In all, approximately 30 deserted medieval villages had been identified by 1984, have been located within the bounds of the old county of Glamorgan, and indeed important work was carried out in the present area of South Glamorgan during the 1960s and 1970s. And some of that work was done by Barry people, such as Howard Thomas. In particular, medieval peasant houses were unearthed at Barry, work by Howard Thomas, Landock, Lower Porthkerry, work by Howard Thomas, Merthyr Dyfan, work by Howard Thomas, Sully, work by Howard Thomas and Brian Baudet, Brian Luxton, Gerald Baudet, and also Gareth Dowdall. And moreover, at Highlight, also work by Howard Thomas. Bloody hell. On the northern outskirts of Barry, as well as a survey of the deserted village, the former church and moated manor were excavated at Highlight, north of Barry. All of these discoveries provided previously unrecorded background on medieval settlement in southeast Wales, but as yet the opportunities for comprehensive village excavation had not arisen until 1977. The problem is with Howard Thomas's work is it was only him and a small group of people. They did not excavate all of the village, but now in 1977, which isn't to Howard Thomas's detriment, he did a very good job nevertheless in what he showed us, including the church and the manor house and some of the buildings. In 1977, the Mona Grant Archaeological Trust carried out a small-scale rescue excavation. What rescue excavation is on the supposed site of Cosmeston Castle near Sully in the southeastern Vale. Unfortunately, at this time, the results proved largely negative, though the findings of a documentary survey conducted as part of the project suggested strongly that the castle and an associated village still await discovery somewhere in the vicinity. Right, so they were doing work. They really hadn't found what they wanted to, right? But things were to move on, and what would move on is not, they would excavate this building, which is a dovecote, which you could actually see some of the little dove roosting cots, and that's where I went up to, and I kissed my person that would eventually be my first wife. So there you go. That moment, we didn't do anything else, so don't worry. So I showed her this, and we talked about the roosting cots, and you know, I had to give her a big sloppy kiss. So that was there. And so they'd excavated this in 1982, and in the late summer of 1982, at the request of South Glamorgan County Council, the Trust began a further series of trial excavations within Cosmeston Lakes Country Park. And this is where it was going to be. This is where this was going to be where the Tourist Information Centre would be, which would have actually been probably perfect. Because they had an existing road on the left, which was slightly deserted. They could have had a car park on the left. They would have been able to sort of put the, the council said,
isn't there a dovecot at Orchard Castle?
"Oh shit, yeah, there is. It's square."
And that's where that's where you identify how to go down. You know, it's near the entrance to the woods, isn't it? To the house.
Yes. That's another route.
Yeah.
Oh no, you are right. I'm glad you identified that, because that's intact just without the roof, but that's square. Yeah, exactly. You are right, Anne. You are right. So what they then did, they excavated, and they excavated this spot, and they found medieval houses, and they said, "Oh, we can't build on this.
Oh,
We can't build on this, and we can't put the Tourist Information Centre here. We can't do it." So a general view of the early excavations at Cosmeston, the three figures are standing in buildings which have been identified. So I can tell you what's going on.
yeah.
Right, let's get my knowledge of this site fully flowing. Right, so basically, hopefully I can draw properly. So there we go. There we go. And right, so what we're going to do, that there, over there, and there, that's the barn. This here is the byre building, and the byre is like underneath you would have animals, and above you'd have a hayloft. So that's a byre building. So that the hayloft would be on first floor, and over here you had another building. So basically you had barn on the left, for the wagons and stuff. The byre here, which would be accommodation, and over on the right, that would be the main accommodation, right? So basically, two sets of accommodation, centre and over there, and on the left, that's the barn, and this would have been the Reeves house, and the Reeve, that this would have been the Reeves building. The Reeve was the mulctor. Greek mulctor, basically meaning the guy who runs the village, but really not elected, but the mulctor's there. Sort of to look after the village when the Lord of the Manor's not there, which was like most of the time. He was the Reeve, the sheriff, the big poncho. The Reeve is the person that you would have actually have paid to actually have your own ship back. And what I mean by that is actually the village dung heap would be in the yard of the Reeve's house, right? And basically when you needed your dung, which would be a huge pile, you would dig into the dung heap. And then you would obviously, provide some recompense to the Reeve for the use of your own ship to spread on fields that were owned by the Lord of the Manor. That's basically what would have happened. And actually, having the dung heap in the yard of the Reeve was also profitable for the Reeve, not just in recompense sake. It was also profitable because it would have warmed that part of the building, and it would have warmed this part of the building. So if you've got the dung heap there, right, it would have warmed both of the buildings because it would have sort of broken down and there'd be heat coming through the walls. Result. So once again, the work was aimed at the identity, and then basically they not only identified this, but they also identified the remains of the castle as well, and the dovecote, as we've already seen. So if we stop the annotation, so they revealed this, and then that was where they started excavating it. Oh, hang on a minute. We've gone through all the images. Yeah, hang on. So they also started excavating sort of, you can see there, you can see there that they've not only they've actually started excavating. Oh, hang on a minute, we don't want that. There, they excavated in that area. They had no idea that the manor house would be there as well. That's where they put the truss cabins. But the manor house is over there as well. It sort of spreads across the road. The wall goes across the road, basically. Once again, the work was aimed at the identification of the castle, but more especially with an assessment of the nature and potential of the village itself. So if we go back to that, off that, and again, working out the potential of this, which would eventually be excavated, and we would then find out that it was like this. This is what they would eventually excavate. And this would be, and you can see the cottage behind. That's the cottage behind the sort of, you know, the cottage that we know was on maps from about the 1600s onwards, probably earlier. And then what we've got, that building there, the one in front, this is the other way around. This is sort of facing towards Cardiff. This is the other way around. You can see the yard there and a little bit of wall going across. The barn's much bigger than the house. And there they are restoring that building. So that building in the forefront is that. Now, so I got to give you one fact that is sometimes awkward for me, but it's awkward because they deliberately did something wrong. I'll just mention a few things. First of all, you can see the wall in the forefront. Directly in front of that, we sort of found the remains of an earlier wall which predated the medieval village. So we know that there was a native village here, native people, not people that had been Normanized, right? So the next fact is that they built the walls this way because there was a fire risk. If they built, what they wanted to build the walls to sort of full height with a crux frame roof, so that health and safety would be okay with these houses being used as a tourist attraction, and it wouldn't be a fire risk. In fact, one of the buildings was set alight at one time. Even with the thatched roof, it still went up. So, you know, so it was an authentic reconstruction of the village, but they reconstructed it directly on the original footings of the buildings. That's the main thing. Directly on the original footings of the buildings, they rebuilt it. But the actual reconstructions, the height of the walls is wrong. It's based on the village in France, right? Not a village here. And the buildings were built in one of the buildings was built in tribute to one of the original excavators at the site who sadly died. There used to be a little plaque on the wall. I can't remember his name, unfortunately. So archaeologists at work on the consolidation of a medieval peasant house at Cosmeston during the excavations of the site has been open to visitors, and many of the finds displayed in a site exhibition. Hang on, site exhibition. There it is. There's the site. There's Anne standing there. Such reconsolidation will eventually provide the basis for a permanent museum of medieval village life. And yes, yes. I'm not going to tell you what happened after 1990, but things didn't go that way because funding was stopped, and you know it sort of didn't go that way anymore. And the new unitary authority eventually took over and so on, but for a good decade it was like this. This is the way it was. But unfortunately that caravan where all this exhibition was broken into and the coins were nicked, unfortunately. So the project began on a site adjacent to the ruinous Cosmeston farm cottage, now refurbished by the county council as a weaver's cottage. So that's one fact I didn't know. I didn't know that that building, you know, I always, that building over there, it's sort of saying it's ruinous, but it's got a roof on it. So not really sure that that's right. Anyway, they made it good. And it's talk again, as we know, the former road, you know, the former road. So the former main road, which eventually became, if we move on Uh, this building furthest along with the Bezard, on the other side of that was actually the road, so it fronted onto the road. The presence of a deserted village at this site had had finally been proved beyond doubt. Indeed, the results of this initial work were so successful, holding so much potential for full-scale investigation, that the seeds for a complete medieval village investigation were gradually sown. So this was what was happening over the winter months of the 1982-1983. The Archaeological Trust, together with the County Council, planned a programme of work to last several years, which, on its completion, would probably make Cosmeston one of the most fully excavated medieval villages in Britain. Moreover, the excavations were not to be undertaken in isolation. They were to be accompanied and complemented by a thorough documentary and archaeological survey of the entire medieval settlement pattern in southeastern Vale of Glamorgan. Finally, one of the most exciting aspects of the whole project is to be the creation of a site museum, which actually become the buildings themselves. That was really the site museum. Medieval village houses and other buildings will be reconstructed, and aspects of the former way of life will be the subject of various experiments. These will range from methods of pottery production to the types of crop grown in the surrounding fields. They found out that growing conditions here were so bad that when this village was hit by the plague, it basically fell over, and that was it. They actually had soy sheep at the site, and I think they found soy sheep so difficult to look after that they had to get rid of them. But they actually had old sort of looking sheep. Now, I know that soy sheep are so difficult to look after. We had 2 soy sheep in West Wales for 2 days, and we had to pay for somebody to take them away. Not to the knacker's yard. The guy who sold them to us, we had to pay him to take them back. These soy sheep were so actually they lasted a day, because they jumped our fences. They went into the other field and ravaged all the sheep.
Ravished all the what?
Ravaged all the ewes.
Oh.
So the farmer ended up having a textile lambs with horns.
Oh.
So we got rid of them. So anyway, they had soy sheep, and they found them difficult to look after, so that they didn't last long. But anyway, but it was a really good scene seeing these sheep wandering around for a while. Actually,
yeah,
it was really nice. So this is a fragment of medieval faced mask jug found during the 1982 excavations at Cosmeston. From documentary evidence, we now know the settlement derived its name from the Constantine or a Cosmeston family, whose origins can be traced to Normandy, but may have arrived in this area with Robert Fitzhammond during his conquest of Glamorgan in the closing years of the 1000s. There's a fragment of a medieval face mask jug found during the 1982 excavations of Cosmeston. Other examples of this have actually since been found across South Glamorgan, but basically this is associated with the handle and basically this is it's actually a proper face with glaze on it. I think that's one of the items that they got on display. So the earliest direct reference, however, is to a Robert de Constantino, who can be identified as holding land in South Wales in 1166. By 1304, Thomas Cosmeston held the fee or ownership of the land of the manor of Cosmeston, and the same Thomas Constantinian from the Constantine family, obviously the name has mutated, was recorded as Lord in 1314. Interesting that the family was still there in 1314. However, soon afterwards, the family appears to have lost its interest in the manor. So soon after wasn't too long, because 1349 was when the plague hit the area. It's likely that members of the family actually died and basically desertion started to fall in with the village. It eventually fell to the De Cavershams and was still held by them in 1550. At this point, the village really ceased to exist. It was the land that they farmed with sheep. That is unfortunate, but we cannot be sure of the reasons for the desertion of the many medieval houses. But we do believe it's to do with the plague. We do believe that was the case back then. And we'll go on to that in a moment. So I can remember headlines in a local newspaper to get people along there, and people flocked in there in their thousands. Plague pits due to be found next week. And they used to run that for about 6 weeks. People used to forget that they read it, and people would be flocking there and seeing the archaeologists excavate, reconstruct, and they would be expecting to see plague pits. Never happened. Nonetheless, the poor economic conditions of the early 1300s, compounded by the ravages of the Black Death in it started to hit England 1348, hit Wales 1349, undoubtedly played their part. Further documentary references certainly reveal a present population in the 1400s. Though by 1437, the manor house itself seems to have been in ruin. So, in other words, what was happening is that most of the village houses were abandoned, probably by 1349, and the manor was in ruin by 1437. So something quite dramatic must have happened decades and decades earlier. One or two villages hang on, but it was not much of a village at that point anyway. The village and a number of the cottages, that one probably behind, and in other areas as part of the village would have continued. But this village, as a village, started to cease operation by that point. Turning to the excavations themselves, work began in earnest. So the massive excavations from May 1983, and within a short time, a large open area had been uncovered with evidence for a number of medieval structures. And guess who used to wash the pottery? Principally on the eastern side of the former village street, 2 medieval plots have been examined. And the northern plot was found to contain an extremely interesting group of buildings. That's this, which may well have comprised a single well-to-do farmstead or a reeved house. Adjacent to and parallel with the street lay a large barn, the one on the left by where the old tree is. Itself separated its associated single roomed house to the east by a small byre, which is the one in the middle. Some say it's a storage building, and you've got the building on the right closest towards the modern road. All 3 were built around a paved courtyard which was in front of the buyer's house. So if we go with the reconstruction again, hang on, reconstruction, there we go. And this was all up and running in the 1300s. The house consisted of low stone walls and originally is likely to have been a timber superstructure. So obviously we've explained why they reconstructed it in that way. So if we go to there's as it looks now. So the buyer's house is the furthest one on the far end, and the building in the middle there is actually a row of cottages, 2 cottages back to back, and that building there in front, directly in front of us, is the kiln. Now I've got a beautiful photograph of Knob End and my niece Kerry standing in there. Knob End is my fond name for my granddad Noah. Standing in the doorway there, which is a little bit over towards the right. So that's basically, you've got the houses fronting on, and on the right hand side they excavated a barn, a big sort of building. Once more, their construction in stone seems to have taken place in the early 1300s, and their dimensions were almost identical. It was the buildings, both the left and the right of the buildings in the middle there, had identical dimensions. So there's sort of a tiny row of cottages, and then you've got the elaborate kiln or oven that's been excavated, and this represents the village bake house. Wonderful building. And if we look at the plan now, you can see there the village oven or popty. They call it the baker's house, but peasant's cottage. And you've got the Reeves house there, and the barn and the byre. And you've got that reconstructed there, the tithe barn, and the swineherd, the guy who lived in the Mochin house, the swineherd cottage, and basically a bee bowl type. When I say a bee bowl, it wasn't a bee bowl as such, but a beehive shaped swine house, which is there. So that's the swineherd's house. And
How old were you when you were working on this?
8,
8?
8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Oh, right. Because I was just thinking 1982, Mari wasn't born. 1983 she was born. So it was really during your childhood, wasn't it? You know, it's an amazing thing to be attached to, you know.
To be honest with you, can I just say this? Yeah, it is an amazing thing to be attached to. And to be honest with you, if things get very dark for me, I remember the times at Cosmeston, because it was the nicest time ever. There were some things that I witnessed that went wrong there, which sort of well, there was an incident that I witnessed that I was only witness to, and that's why I started falling out with the Glamorgan Archaeological Trust. You know, it was a serious incident, which I'm not going to go into, but but other than that, I focused on all the fond memories of what happened at Cosmeston, all the very, very fond memories.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, all those years and leading up to that incident. And by the way, when that incident happened, it was only another year then, and the MSC Manpower Services Scheme money was withdrawn, so that was it. So anyway, moving on.
Like the heydays.
These were the 1980s were the heydays of archaeology, big time.
Yeah.
You know, 1980s there was so much archaeological work going on at Cosmeston Medieval Village, and the Atlantic Trading Estate, and Llanmace, and Cardiff, and Cowbridge, and all these different places. That more people were being employed in archaeology than probably. Hang on, more people employed in archaeology. Let me get a parallel with the amount of people. There are about 150 people working in archaeology in the Vale of Glamorgan alone. So, you know, more people working in archaeology than probably I don't know, secondary school teachers. Yeah, exactly. There was anyway. Moving on. So what we've got. This is obviously a modern plan, but a general view of the fully excavated farm, which is where you've got the reconstruction there. Okay, hang on. We'll get to the exact reference. So in the photograph, the former village street ran to the left of the large tree stump, with the footings of the large barn seen running parallel to this. The clear remains of a substantial early 1300s house lie to the right, which was originally separated from the barn by the byre, as we've already said. So this was completely, fully reconstructed, right? Fully reconstructed. And this itself is something that is quite remarkable in what was actually achieved. So it goes to say, finally, as we finish today, on the hillside above the main village area, the ruins of a circular dovecote, as we've already mentioned, have been excavated and found to be similar to those at Lanswick and Barry, which we've already mentioned. Such structures were usually linked to manorial centres and the Cosmeston dovecote. So if we go back to the dovecote quickly, the Cosmeston dovecote could have housed some 500 pairs of birds, or I would say 660 roosting pairs of birds, the number of the beast, and would have been an important supply of eggs and fresh meat. It's not as big as the one at Cosmeston. It's not as big as the one at Carrickston, but probably similar to the size as the one at Langford Major. Other areas have been explored since the excavations began, and there are definite hints as to the location of the all-important manor house belonging to the Constantine lords and their successors. It seems likely that this will eventually be fully recorded by the archaeologists. Work has already progressed well with consolidation of the existing remains. Both the Dovecote and the important farmstead group at the northern part of the site have been systematically restored. Further progress will be made as additional buildings are uncovered and recorded, and it will continue to be found and recorded into the 1990s as well, after basically the Glamorgan Grant Archaeological Trust fell out with the local authority. They were providing the funding, and just things went pear-shaped. The work at Cosmeston represented something quite unique and should be welcomed by the people of South Glamorgan, as well as playing host to exhibitions, informative tours, and even medieval fairs. It is clearly a new and challenging attempt to uncover more of their rich and formidable heritage would be undertaken. And I'll tell you something which is something that I never tell anybody, but in 1990, I was invited to visit the chief executive of the Vale of Glamorgan Borough Council, and he said to me, would you like a job being the archaeologist to take over at Cosmeston Medieval Village? But unfortunately, it was probably not the right time in my life, and I would have only been about 15 or 16. So it just came at the wrong time. But he was very, very serious, and if I had somebody to sort of guide me, I could have done it, but there was nobody really to guide me, and that was basically the way things went. Anyway, the fish that got away, but we can't have everything in life. And as Kate said to me very recently, I said to Kate about another thing that I could have done when I was about that age. And she said that maybe you wouldn't have had the life experience that you've got now, had you have had if you'd have done the other thing. And she's probably very, very right.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. You would have been.
I would have just been stuck at Cosmeston Medieval Village all my life. It would have been a great experience, but I probably would not have learned about the wider world. And yeah, that's life. Anyway, we're going to call that a day now, and I would recommend still going to see the village. Things have changed. Things are. It's good to get a feel. You're not going to get the same feel I had. I don't get the same feel when I go there these days, but it's definitely something very, very important and very hallowed in my life, and and it always will be. So I'm glad I shared that with you today. And is there any questions?
I only wondered whether the problems with archaeology and funding had anything to do with what government was in power at the time.
Yes, it's got everything to do with what government's in power, simply because the Manpower Services Scheme was obviously set up by Labour, I think, and it went through into the period of the Conservatives, and it was a brilliant scheme to get people off into work and off the dole. And the Conservatives cut it. Now, they didn't just do archaeology. They did Duke of Edinburgh. They did like, for example, they did work at Dufferin House. Conservation projects. So archaeology was only part of the scheme funding. I worked
with them. Well, in admin. But I did remember the Manpower Services and a lot of opportunities it gave to people.
And unfortunately, for me, it was it was one of the massive downsides of the Conservative government, why they cut it. But obviously, that was political. Why they cut it was something that was, I don't know.
I know,
Yeah.
you could trace it. You could trace the downturn of things,
Yes.
because they're conserving money. They're taking money out of areas and putting them elsewhere, or not putting them elsewhere, and it's just that thanks for that anyway. I think it's a really worthwhile visit to go
Yes, it
there
is.
and to see this program with you today, to see how it all happened, how it all started.
And it's available to view on YouTube if anyone's interested. Anyone watching on YouTube as well, thank you very much for watching. Anybody else? Anyway, thanks for that, Anne, because I'm gonna have to go soon. So anything that Ruth and Kate would like to say?
Fun. There we are. Brilliant. Not just the life experiences you would have had, dear, but what you've been able to give to everybody else. You've spread it around, and we appreciate it.
Yes.
I spread the love.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. I
We
mean,
love you, and lots of other people love you too. You've shared the love
Thank you very much.
Not at all. Now, B-Bowl, you mentioned B-Bowl, and is that sort of hollow you'd have in a stone wall for a beehive
there's different
around your orchard or other?
Yeah,
Isn't
basically,
that what a bee-bowl is?
Basically a bee-bowl, it's a hollow, is a place. I've used it quite rudely to describe a swineherd, sort of,
the shape
house.
beehive. I know what you mean.
Basically that's the one what I was looking at. I was using it quite crudely in that sort of sense, a rude sense of use of that term. Yeah.
Oh, there's one thing I was going to say. I did say St. John's House is now owned by St. John's Trust, and it's encouraging to know that 20 years ago a handful of people got together and started fundraising, and when COVID happened, they actually got a lot of funding, and they were able to buy the house. It's amazing, really. It's a miracle how they were able to do it. I suppose you could say beg, steal, or borrow, but it is possible, to do these things without having government, not direct government.
Oh, I think you're quite right.
So we could get your Iron Age hill for your roundhouse.
Well, yeah, exactly. I'm in the same situation as
the museum. You got to choose which one.
Exactly. Exactly. It's all for the good of the country, as we say. It's all for the good of the country. Right. So, okay then. Anything else that Ruth would like to say, or Kate? And I'll let you know about what's going on in the next couple of days. Okay. As well.
Well, I was thinking, but I got the wrong place. It's St. Fagans that the one from Pontedelice comes from, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. St. Fagans is a completely different site. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I walked. It's on a bog. It is in Pontedelice, and I've actually walked over to it, where what was left, because the grave's still there, and the walling,
Oh, the graves are still there, are they?
Yes.
Oh, in Pontedelice.
Yeah,
but they took up all the footings and everything. They took up all the footings and everything, though.
When you drive it down, Carl, the Pontedelice turning, if you look to your right, you'll see it.
Ah, the graves. Right, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's got the walling and the grave's still there.
I think we'll all be fascinated with, medieval. I think we'll always be, more fascinated, because there is so much there. There's so much evidence.
It's knowable.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
knowable. That's it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a knowable element. Exactly.
Yeah. So, oh well, I hope your
Yeah.
turkey's all right. Is he
Yeah.
Yeah,
poorly?
I gotta have to get back to the animals in a minute. So,
Yeah. Okay then. Thanks
so
for that, Carl.
thank you. My pleasure. So Ruth and Kate and Anne, anything else you'd like to say before we finish today?
No, we're good, I think.
We're good.
Are you still
Yeah.
doing the St. Barrack thing?
Oh yeah, do you want to quickly mention that, Ruth, before we finish?
What?
What
St.
day?
Barracks.
27th of September.
27th, and that's a
That's right. And I haven't spoken to the West End Club because I'm still thinking about it.
yeah. Okay then, that's all right. That's fine. It could be
Right, okay.
this little or as big. Anyway, yeah,
Is
we'll
it
be in
possible to
touch.
get our hands on Cosmeston?
Yeah.
Would
Yeah.
it be possible to get our hands on Cosmeston?
I'll have to
Well,
try and come over. I'll have
well,
to
why
see-
don't you keep it simple to the West End Labour Club? That's more simple. Yes, keep it to that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
I want an excuse to go there.
Yeah, and me.
Go play there.
I've never been there.
An excuse to go to the Labour Club.
No.
Oh, yes, and there's that as well. Except it's not the Labour Club anymore.
Oh,
It's simply the West End Club.
Yeah.
oh, better. Yeah.
I
okay,
resigned the Labour Club,
I could
the Labour
actually
Party,
get
as did I.
don't
way
think
back
we'll
when.
go in there.
Okay.
Okay, right. Anything else that anyone wants to say, Ruth, Kate, or Anne, before we finish?
27th.
No, just blowing you all kisses.
Mwah,
Thank you very much. Oh, kisses are always useful. Kisses are
And
always good.
prayers for Pete.
mwah,
Kisses
mwah.
for you, stable,
And obviously,
kisses.
love to Pete. Okay, and Richard. Okay, and okay, brilliant.
We're going
Okay,
now.
then we'll call it
Bye.
a day. We'll call it a day then. So Ruth, Kate, and Anne, I'll keep you up to date, and I'll speak to you soon. Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Take care,
Bye.
guys. Take care,
Bye.
lovelies. Love you all. Bye. Bye.
Well,
Bye. 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 Anyway, anyone watching online, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I need a cup of tea now. Cup of tea biscuits now. So I'm just going to read what it says in the chat box. My OCD about the chat box. St. John's House, Bridgend. Kate A. No, being purchased by St. John's Trust. And that's it. Has been Bridgend, St. John's House, being purchased by St. John's Trust. Thank you very much. That's from Anne on 3, 2, 1. Chat box closed. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell. Thank you very much for everybody's continued support. I'll go get back with the turkeys. Take care. Bye. And watch me on TikTok next week. Next week 11, and also Tuesday evening 7:30 and Wednesday at 7:20. Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr i chi. Ymorahyd. Diolch. Bye.